big house by the great forest with your parents and your brother Hansel. Your parents are both unemployed and life is hard. You have little to eat and certainly no internet or cell phone or vacations. Your clothes are hands-me-down from distant cousins. One night, when you're lying in the old Agera bed you share with your brother, you can hear your parents talking through the paper-thin walls. Your father says, "What is to become of us? How are we to feed our poor children when we can barely feed ourselves?" Your mother replies, "I'll tell you what, husband. The children are old enough to survive on their own. Early tomorrow morning we will take them into the deepest reaches of the forest. There we shall light the fire for them and give each of them one more piece of bread, and then we shall leave them." "No, wife," your father says. "I will not do that. How can I bear to leave my children alone in the forest? The wild animals would soon come and tear them to pieces, or they might wander into an irradiated zone." "Oh, you fool," says your mother. "Then we must all four die of hunger. You may as well dig 4 graves in the backyard." And your mother goes on arguing with your father until finally he gives in. "But I feel very sorry for the poor children all the same," he says. "The time to feel hungry and sorry for yourselves has passed. What to do? It is time to act." When your parents have fallen asleep, you get out of your beds and try to open the bedroom door, but it's locked. Hans runs over to the window, even though you both know it was nailed shut long ago to keep burglars out. You both go back to bed and hold each other tight, crying yourselves to sleep. The next morning, your mother wakes you up. "Get up, lazybones. We are going into the forest to look for spare parts." She gives you and your brother a piece of bread each. "Here is something to eat for dinner, but do not eat it too soon, for this is all you get." You all set out for the forest together. The trees stand so close together that it's almost dark. Nothing grows on the forest floor but mushrooms that have grown huge and toxic from radiation. Every once in a while, Hansel stops and looks back to remember the way. Finally, your father says, "Hansel, why are you falling behind and what are you looking at?" "Forgive me, father, but I thought I saw a deer." "Silly boy," your father replies. "There haven't been deer in these parts for years." You are deeper into the forest than you have ever been before. You come to a little clearing, and your father says, "Now, children, pile up some wood, and I will light a fire that you may not be cold." You gather brushwood and dead branches into a huge pile as high as a little hill. Your father lights it, and when the flames are burning very high, your mother says, "Now, children, lay yourself down by the fire and rest. We will go look for scrap metal at an old factory we heard about. When we are done, we will come back and fetch you home." You sit by the fire, and when the sun sinks lower, you eat some of the bread. You fall asleep. The sound of footsteps wake you up. It is dark night, and the fire has gone out, and someone is out there in the darkness. You both cry out with fear. "It's only me," your father says. "I have come to fetch you home." He takes you by the hand and leads you back through the forest. When you return home, your mother is standing in the kitchen. She stares at the three of you for a moment and then cries, "Why are you so late? It has been dark for hours." As you lay in bed once more, you can hear your parents arguing. "Why did you take them home again?" Your mother says, "I have told you they are old enough to fend for themselves. My parents did the same when I was little, and so did yours." "I could not stand the thought of them alone in the darkness," your father replies. "Well, the food is almost gone again," says your mother. "We have a can of beans left, and that's all. The children must go. We will take them further into the forest so that they will not find their way out again. It is for their own good and ours." When you think your parents fall asleep, you once again try to sneak outside, but the door is locked. Nevertheless, Hans comforts you. Don't cry, Gretel. Go to sleep quietly. Early in the morning, your parents drive you out of your beds and give you a can of beans to share. This is the last can of beans, your mother says, and you will get nothing else today, so be very mindful of it. You put the beans in your pocket and hold it tight. Your father takes your other hand, and together the four of you walk into the forest. Today, your parents lead you ever deeper into the forest, where you have never been before. Just like yesterday, you make a great fire, and your mother says, "Just wait here, children, and when you are tired, you may sleep a little. In the evening, we will come and fetch you home." It is noon, and you share the beans with your brother. Then you fall asleep. You do not wake until it's dark night. You are both scared, but Hansel comforts you and says, "Our parents promised to come and fetch us home, and so they will. Perhaps they are late because they found more spare parts than they can carry." The moon comes out and makes its way across the sky. The fire has shrunk into a pile of embers. Still, your parents do not return. The moon sets, and mist settles on the ground, and the sun rises to burn the mist away, but your parents do not return. You make a nest under an old pine in the clearing to hide from the acid rain and the strange creatures howling in the woods at night. You sing to each other and tell stories and cry yourselves to sleep. 2 more days come and go. You are sick with thirst and hunger, but your parents do not return. On the 3rd night, when you are sure you must soon die of thirst, there is a flash of light. You crawl out from under your tree and see a red distress flare hanging in the eastern sky. "Someone needs help," Hansel says. You join hands and stumble through the forest on weak legs toward the light. If someone is about to be rescued, perhaps you can be rescued too. You come out of the trees and see a huge sign that says Summerland. It is an amusement park, but the sign is covered in vines, and the ground is overgrown with grass and weeds. The Ferris wheel is still and the roller coaster is falling apart. But look, in the middle of the park is a fairy tale castle, shining in bright colors. And there, a carousel spinning round and round. And there, a chocolate wheel, and the prices are still there. The chocolate bars and pralines are white with age, but still tasty, and you eat until you can eat no more. Suddenly, a soft voice whispers through the speaker system. "Nibble, nibble, gnaw. Who is nibbling at my prices?" The wind, the heaven-born wind," answers Hans. You find bottles of soda in the moldy fridge of a soda stand. When you have sated your thirst and hunger, you turn your attention to the attractions, such wonderful carousel horses and bumper cars that work. But best of all is the fairy tale castle. You hop into a carriage shaped like a flying boat, and it takes you through wonderful sceneries, where gnomes and jinn and fairies wave at you from magical landscapes, and there, a scary witch by a house on chicken legs. She smiles at you and steps out of the frame and pushes a big red button. The boat stops, and you realize it's a real person, an old woman. "Oh, you dear children, who has brought you here? You look so hungry and cold. Welcome to my house. No harm shall come to you." She takes you by the hand and opens the door at the back of the scenery. On the other side is a big kitchen with an iron stove. Sausages, garlic braids, and herbs hang from the rafters, and on the kitchen table sits a bowl of real apples. "It is so nice to have company," says the old woman. "Sit down and let's get some food into you." You have spicy sausages with mashed potatoes, and pancakes with sugar and apples, and fresh bread slathered with real butter, and finally ginger cookies and hot chocolate with whipped cream on top. When you are so full you can barely move, the old woman shows you to a couple of little beds. She tucks you in between clean white linen sheets. You think about the day you've had, and suddenly remember why you came here. Someone needed rescue. You had forgotten all about it. But there's just a kind old woman stirring a pot on the stove. Who is she, really? You wake up because Hansel is screaming. He is sitting up in bed, and the old woman is holding his arm. She turns towards you, sniffing the air, as if she can smell that you're awake. Her dim eyes glow bright red. You can see her for what she is, a ravenous beast, a murderer, a witch. She lets out a raspy laugh that makes your blood run cold and says, "Such morsels, old, plump, and rosy, I have you now. You will not escape me." The witch pulls Hansel out of bed. You try to get out of bed to follow her, but you can't. It is as if your limbs have turned to stone. You can only watch as the witch drags Hansel outside. You hear Hansel screaming and screaming, and then the sound of a heavy door slamming shut. The witch comes back into the kitchen and walks over to your bed. She towers over you, and her blind eyes seem to stare into your soul. You realize that there is nothing you can do. She is your mistress now. "Now, my dear," she says, "I can see you are a clever girl, and I'm sure you are a good cook too." You nod at her, eager to please her. "You are going to fatten your brother up," your new mistress says. "Now go cook him something nice." You do as your mistress commands. When she says make him dinner, you make him dinner. When she says make him breakfast, you make him breakfast. You cook stews and puddings and pies from the witch's unending supply of food. At first you do it because you are terrified of your mistress. But soon you begin to thirst for her praise. Every kind word from her makes you feel special. Hansel reaches for you every time you bring him a meal. He calls your name. "Gretel, Gretel." But you just push the food in through the gap under the door. Hansel is a little piglet now, getting ready for slaughter. Every morning your mistress visits your brother to feel if he is fat enough to eat. Every morning she comes back into the kitchen and says, "All that food and still he is thin as a rail." When you have cooked and fed him for 4 weeks, you finally follow your mistress when she opens the door to Hansel's prison, and there he sits, round and fine with rosy cheeks. "Stretch out your finger that I may feel if you will soon be fat," cries your mistress. And then you see it. Hansel holds out a little chicken bone. Your mistress touches it and says, "Still thin as air." "No, mistress," you cry. "He has been fooling you. He is as plump as a pigeon." Your mistress gives you a radiant smile. "Thank you, my dear. You will bring me some water and spices in the morning tomorrow, and then we shall cook." Early in the morning you fetch water and spices. When you come into the kitchen, your mistress has already stoked the fire under the baking oven. On the table sits a butcher knife and a club. "We will bake first," she says. "I have already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." She beckons you over to the enormous oven and opens the hatch. The heat is enough to burn your cheeks. "Crawl inside and see if it's properly heated so that we can put the bread in." You look at her in confusion, for it's easy to tell that the oven is very hot. "Come now, my dear, the door is big enough," says the witch. She gives you a small push, but you are still unsure. "Climb in, the door is big enough. Just look, I can get in myself." And she thrusts her head into the oven. You give the witch a push that drives her far into the oven. Then you shut the iron door and quickly fasten the bolt. "Let me out! Let me out!" cries the witch. "I will give you anything you want. Just let me out." She hammers on the door, but you merely sit down on a chair in the kitchen and wait. You listen to the old hag shriek and howl like a wild animal until she finally stops and there is only the crackling of the fire. Then you open the oven and drag the corpse out. You have honed your cooking skills for a month, and now they will be put to the test. For cooking a witch is no small task. When the day is over, you have cooked 2 fine steaks, crumbly meat pies, fine spicy sausages, lovely sweetbread, and crispy bacon rinds. You eat and eat and eat until you can eat no more. Then you venture out into the fairground. The carousel is still spinning and you ride all of the horses. You go through the whole fairy tale castle in your little winged boat. You ride the bumpy cars until you have crashed every last one. Then you go back inside and eat until you are so full that you fall asleep at the table. You wake up the next morning because Hansel is still calling your name. He is still in the cage. You walk over to the cage and open the door. Hansel sits inside, covered in filth. I heard screaming. Are you here to save me? Hansel asks. You smile at your brother, your plump little brother, who looks so happy to see you. Now it's just you and him, and all will be well. Yes, all will be well. The end. Thank you.